Hello, welcome to Nerd Goblin Art. I'm Lula. I have some Aquacast out today and a very cool mould. And I'm really excited to share this with you. So there's only one thing we can do. Let's go play. Right then, I am currently mixing up my Aquacast. As I said in the introduction, I'm using the eco resin because, well, I want to show you this really cool mould. And I found it on Amazon and it is geared more towards candle making, but I figured that it would be a really cool make to paint and show you a bit of a painting tutorial. And also I want to share with you how I fix any of the bubbles that are caused by the Aquacast. I will do as much as I can not to have too many bubbles in this make, and I will be using my little vibrator thingamajiggy. That sounds so rude. Shut up. I'm not even going to edit it out because, you know, it's me. So, yes. So I've mixed it up already, the Aquacast, which is from Chem, and just given a little tap, and I'm just making sure as well to use my silicone tool. And now, this is a Santa asleep on a chair. Oh my goodness, I'm in love with it. And I found it on Amazon. So I have linked it below in my description box. And I know by the time this video goes out that we are mere days away from Christmas. But I only saw it like 2 days ago and ordered it, came the following day, you know, and time just goes by. But perhaps if you are interested, maybe you could order it for next year or anything like that. I'm giving the table a tap as well to get it like leveled out a little bit. I don't have an actual vibration plate yet, but as I've said in a previous video, I am getting one. I'm going to get one after Christmas. But for now, I'm using like a bottle, a paint shaker thing. It does what it needs, but there's a little bit of detail in this. It is Santa and he's got his beard and stuff like that, so I don't want to have to do too much or any repair work where possible on his face. So that's where I'm at. I have a little bit of resin left over, well, eco resin. And I've had some happy mail. Oh my goodness. I'm hoping I'm saying your name right. I would pronounce it Alicia or Alicia. So thank you so much. It is so kind of you to send me things like this. She sent them from my Amazon wish I do it every time, wish list, which is down below, and I so appreciate it. So I thought I'd pour these so we can check out and see what they're like. The make today isn't about these, but I will be pouring them again. This little guy is a little piggy and it is super cute. And the other one is a cat tea light holder that you can hang up on the wall. So cute, so gorgeous. And I am going to be making up a bunch of them to go on the walls in my head, because you know how much I love my cats. And I want to do that in another video, probably after the new year now. And I want to paint them up to look like my cats. So that's 2 tabbies, a black cat, no, 3 tabbies. Yeah, 3 tabbies and a black cat. And I think they'll look awesome. And I love the challenge of making them. So thank you so much for sending me that lovely gift. I really do appreciate it. And it always knocks me for 6. Like, people are so kind to send me these things. The cat one is a little bit fiddly, to be fair, with the eco resin. because they're for tea light holders, I don't mind using the battery ones, so you know, you can use it with the epoxy resin. And of course, this can be, once I have cast this with the eco resin, I will wash it with soapy warm water before using it with epoxy resin, so that we don't take any of the shine away. Like I said, I don't mind using the battery operated lights with epoxy resin, but there's something so lovely about using proper tea light candles, you know, real candles, and that's why I wanted to try it out with the eco resin. Excuse if you can hear a pussycat meowing, do excuse. If you've been with me a minute, you know that Bilbo can be very chatty when I'm trying to be chatty. And sometimes I can get away with him not keeping on, but today he is. I do manage, when the camera goes off, to fill the last scrapings, use those very last scrapings into the candle holder piece that slides into the larger cap piece. But there's a but. I already managed to break the tail. Yes, I picked it up, I think, when it was not quite fully cured, because I was just moving some things around, and it just snapped. And that's nothing to do with the mould, it's nothing to do with the product at all. That was just me. But the whiskers came off. But I was expecting it. I really was expecting it. So when I do cast this after the new year, and I'll be casting it 4 times because it's for the pussycats, I'm definitely still going to be doing it with the eco resin, but I'm also going to leave enough room on the back of it to also do a layer of UV. Look at the little piggy! Oh my goodness, he is so cute. When the zoom, there we go. That's better. A few little bubbles in him, but that is not a problem. He is stunning. So thank you so much. But today's video is about this guy. Now this is a chunky old make. That's what she said. But it's awesome. Look, can you see why I loved it when I saw it? Why would you want to make this into a candle? Why would you want to burn Santa? I tell you, it is absolutely perfect, and I love it. I know I've said it a million times. I love it a lot. So as normal, I'm going to be popping this onto my wire rack, and I'll be leaving it for about 24 hours before I do anything else with it. And I can do the repair beforehand, but I'm out of energy and I'm being very good. So this is the following morning. They've been sitting on the rack, and closer inspection, there's a few little bubbles, nothing massively serious. And once it's sealed and being painted, it wouldn't be a massive issue. It might be a bit of a pain in the bottom, but this is how I've been repairing any of my makes. That is a bottle of just water. It's something that I use, and I had to adjust the camera because I tried repairing my camera arm and it's a little bit dodgy. So that is just water. I use it for spraying my canvases if they seem a little bit thirsty. And that is just a little sanding tool. You can find these on Temu, and I find them so useful. And a silicone tool. And all I've done is sprayed the water on there, given it a very light sanding, and then smoothed it over. It kind of reactivates the Aquacast, so to speak. Now, I haven't tried this with any other brands other than Aquacast, because that is what that's the eco resin that I'm loving using, and I've still got another 10 kilogram tub to get through because I ordered 2 tubs of 10 by accident. But I'll be using it. I'm going to be using it all. So it's just a case of a little bit of a spray and then sanding it over very gently, and I'm just concentrating on the areas that need it. And then I go between using my finger and also using a silicone tool. And when you spend a lot of time, as I have, playing with clay and stuff like that, I just find this incredibly relaxing, and I just treat it like I would the clay, basically. But it works. Now, you can just make up a little bit more of your eco resin, whatever brand you're using, and just create a little paste with it. But I was just being lazy one day and didn't want to make up anymore. Just for creating a paste. And of course, when you make up the paste, you end up with a bit of a time limit on getting it before it starts setting itself, really. So doing it this way, I'm just able to take my time and carry on as I like. So I've got one tiny little bubble just on his chest. I think that I really fairly got away with not a bad casting of this guy for the first time of ever casting him. And as you can see, just very gently using my my sanding tool there, little spray of water, and just going around where I think I need to get them sorted out using my finger, or you'll see me picking up that silicone tool. The silicone tool is super handy for areas my fingers can't quite reach to, and of course sometimes it's just easier to use the silicone tool, especially if you don't like textures and stuff like that. I love getting messy with crafts. Obviously not epoxy resin because you can't, but things like clay and stuff like that I really don't mind, and paint, all that sort of stuff. There's a little bit just around his eyes, and of course where the detail's concerned, you just need to take your time and go gently, because of course I don't want to undo any of the detail. So it may take a little bit of practice, but you can practice on other kinds of eco resin makes, and as you start getting the idea, you can get really quite good at it. And to be perfectly honest with you, I blow my trumpet, but I have got pretty darn good at this, and I so enjoy it. I'm one of those strange ones. I don't like sanding. No. I like repair work, but I don't like sanding. And I also love deburring stuff, but not big, like heavy work like deburring. But I do enjoy deburring. I enjoy deburring the epoxies, the eco. I love deburring any of the 3D prints that we do as well. I just very, very much enjoy it. It's just, I get hyper focus, kind of a controlled way, and just get to keep busy, so to speak. So I'm just going to be going around, but don't worry, I'm not going to show you every single aspect of this, but I want to show you enough so you get the idea and you can see how it can be done. Now, admittedly, if this is a make that you're creating and you're not going to be painting on it, you might want to, if you're going to fix it like this, I would put it aside again for another day or so, even a couple of days if need be, to let it all settle down again before sealing it. That I think is a good little bit of advice rather than rushing. So if you are making anything with, I'm going to say the Aquacast, because obviously I don't know if this works the same way or if it will work the same way with Magic Pours and Eco Resin. But that's just my little bit of advice. But look at that. It's looking pretty darn good, isn't it? And it's just a case that I don't want to have, because I'm going to paint it. I'm going to paint it over with some acrylic paint. Sometimes the bubbles can be an issue and other times they are not. But to err on the side of caution, because I don't want to be doing a load of extra work on my painting job because of bubbles, I'd rather fix this now and get it all nice and tidy. I even sand all the back of it as well, using that same tool and the same process with the little bit of a spray of water. And it's good to spray it with the water regardless, because it's had time to dry, you know, it's had time for the moisture to come out. So rather than having free floating dust going around, you've dampened it down, so that makes it a lot safer for you. Of course, if you are sanding and not using water, please make sure you are wearing at least a dust mask so you're not breathing any of this stuff in, because you shouldn't be doing it, should you? It's just being safe. So I'm going to do under the knees. I'm even going to be doing under by here just to tidy up the detail a little bit. But it's all good. I'm going to be fixing this and I'm going to leave it for probably 6 hours or so before it gets primed, and then I'm going to be leaving it until the following day. Yeah, I've been very, very patient with this make. I've been very, very good. Not only because my energy levels have been very low, so I've had to take my time with doing any making. And I know a lot of you know how impatient I am. I think it's very good that I've paced myself, and I'm finally learning to pace myself. Pace myself? Seriously? Pace myself? Words! My goodness, words are really, really hard. See the difference? I'm so chuffed with this make. I can't tell you. Spoiler alert, I'm in love with it. I think it's one of my best paints I've done. So it's gonna get a seal, and then it's gonna get primed. Now, why orange? Why? Well, because I'm going to do a skin tone and I'm also going to be doing the red, the orange is going to act, it's like an orange terracotta. This is a priming spray that was used on it. It acts as a fantastic base for the skin tone, and yes, it's only a tiny little element of his face, but that's fine. It's still going to act as a wonderful I can't think of the words. Words are always so hard, and I know that words are just hard a moment ago, but it's a good base colour for you, for those colours to come through on, including the red of the suit. Now, I've decided as well that the chair that he's sitting on is going to be, I want it to be like an old browny type leather looking chair, and we'll get to that. So with the skin tones, I have out titanium white, cadmium red, burnt sienna, and a tiny little bit of yellow medium. I haven't taken out the cadmium yellow today. I'm using very, very little of it. I'm just doing the tiniest little pinch inside the skin tone. It kind of warms the skin tone a little bit, which is what I want. And the first layer of the skin tone, I'm bringing in the more of the darker shade. And at first I was going to try and be very careful and not go over his eyebrows, and then I was like, nah, this is just silly, because I want to do a dry brush with the next layer, and it's just going to be too difficult. But even with this first layer, you can see how that orange has worked brilliant with starting of the skin tone colour. I'm just, and like I said, just covering up the eyebrows, and I'll get back to them later on in the project. So I've said it before and I'll say it again. The time that people give up on a painting project, and that's whether it is on a model like this or if it's on canvas, they tend to give up, or you tend to give up at the blocking in stage. It can be a kind of an ugly stage, and this is what I'm doing now. This is blocking in, so it's a bit darker, it's a bit of a funny shade, but we're going to be bringing it forward in colour. And when you're using acrylics, it's always best to start from your darker base colour for you to bring it forward. So I'm going to be blocking in the Santa suit now. So I've just added to the palette some Mars Black, and I'm going to mix that with my cadmium red, and that's to make kind of a brick-like colour. This is the colour I like to start with in general when I want to bring red forward to make it pop. And of course, when I'm painting it in as well, I'm getting right into those corners, and I'm not going to be recovering those corners up. This part of the project, it gets the base in, so our darker tones, and then the lighter parts of the material. Look at pictures, look at people in the room who might be with you, and check out how shadows work. So your darker tones are going to be in the folds and in like the arm crevices and stuff like that. So those darker points, they need to be there. I want to have those darker points, and I'm not going to be taking them away, but more to the middle of the parts of the material. That's where we want our brighter spots, and that's what I'm going to be doing. So we'll start with our darker tone, and then we'll bring it forward. And again, at first, I was going to try and avoid the belt and buckle on Santa's tummy, but I decided, nope, I'm going to be giving that like the black effect anyway. So I'll just paint over it. It doesn't matter. It is absolutely fine. And if anything, it just gives me more of a base to work with. So remembering that he has fur, he's got fur lining on his outfit as well. So we're going to be working on those, and I'm going to be doing 2 different kinds of whites. So we'll go on to that shortly. Not forgetting the hat. And I am trying to be as careful as possible not to get too much paint in other areas where it doesn't belong, because depending on the colours that you want to use, it can sometimes give you a little bit of extra work to do. But I'm being as tidy as I possibly can, and as I said, I want the actual sofa, the chair, to be more of an old looking leather type. So I'm going to work next on bringing out more of the colour of the beard. And what I'm going to go for first, I've taken out some phthalo blue. I'm using a mixture, by the way, of Winsor & Newton, Golden and Liquid-X. And I'm mixing in some titanium white with the phthalo blue. And this is going to be... Oh, I also do add a little bit of burnt sienna. So this is the first impression for Santa's hair and beard. He's got the tiniest little strip of hair that's appearing from underneath his hat by there. Then, of course, we've got his beard. Now, I want to do slightly different tones of white to differentiate between his hair on his head and face and the fur on his Santa suit. And that's because white isn't just white. You know, we get different tones of white and different impressions of white from what the base may be. So I'm going with the base being more of like the bluey kind of tone for his facial hair, because of where it's, you know, where it's grey, more grey, like at the darker white at the base to his skin, and then we can add the pop of white over the top. So this gives us our shadow underneath, and honestly this works, I promise. And it looks quite bright here, but honestly it really does work. And this is a great way to introduce your white tones, because as much as we see white as being white, it never is. It never really is. There's always an undertone there. So this is the best way. I know I'm rubbish. I'm trying to describe stuff to you. I understand it in my head, but words, when I try to explain it, I don't think it ever comes out really as well as I want it to. I wish I could. I wish I could articulate incredibly well to you guys. But can you tell I'm excited about this, Meg? I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I like that I took time with it as well. So that is looking very, very good. And now I'm going to start on the fur. And for this, I'm going into the burnt sienna and the titanium white. And I've got the tiniest little bit of the phthalo blue in there, just the tiniest amount. Now this is my favourite combination of colours to use when I'm creating snow, because you know, more times than any, when you look at snow, it's over earth, it's over grass and stuff like that. So you've usually got your, you know, tones of colour underneath the snow. I know what I mean. But for the fur of his outfit, I really wanted it to look different to the facial hair. It's as simple as that. So going in with mainly the burnt sienna with the titanium white and just that little touch of the phthalo blue, and I just added just now the tiniest little hint of Mars black as well, because I want it to have that the shadow element underneath the rim of his hat and under where his gloves meet and such. I did actually nearly forget to do the how I missed it, because it's screaming orange. But I did nearly forget to do the fur line around his waistline. But you know, it is what it is. And I'm doing it this way because the way I've chosen to do the colours in the order that I have means that I've got less cleanup work afterwards, so to speak. So sometimes it's really worth thinking it through and deciding where you need to go with these things. So I'm just coming back into the beard just to tidy it up. It's always good to sit back and give your painting project a couple of moments. And don't forget as well that where acrylic paints are concerned, they always dry darker. So it's always worth giving them a hot minute and letting them settle for a few. I'm mixing for the mittens, and I do the same with the boots and his buckle of his belt, not his buckle, but the leather of the belt. I'm mixing in Mars black with a little bit of the phthalo blue. And this is to give it more of an interesting tone. I'm not going to be adding any highlights to the black, because the natural light will kind of do that for me. But adding the phthalo blue to the Mars black gives it a different kind of depth. And if I did want to add any highlights to it, it's a really good way of introducing a bit of a highlight, because you can bring forward the phthalo blue a little bit and add on some titanium white as you go. But with the natural light, I think that this combination works really well, so it doesn't need any highlighting. I'm not too worried about the belt and buckle at this moment or at this point, but I wanted to get it in there because it gives you a better idea of what we're looking at with a fully blocked in Santa. before we start adding his highlights and bringing him a bit more into life with more of those colour pops. And it is a good lesson. It is a really good, I think, tutorial to show you guys some great painting ideas and little hacks here and there. So whilst I'm moving on to doing the, the boots and stuff, it's giving the colours on his beard and his suit a minute to dry. And I do, between filming, I do use my hair dryer as well, so that I'm not sitting around for ages waiting. Because when I do start doing any painting projects, in general, I just like to go, to finish it in one sitting. I don't like to wait, because I want to really get it done. So this is dry between its layers, and I've also painted the leather throne. I'm going to call it a leather throne. That's what I call our leather chair in our house. I call it the leather throne. It was my father-in-law's recliner, and after he passed away, we brought it here, and it's still in here, it's in the living room. It's a reading chair in the corner, and I painted that using Mars Black and Burnt Sienna, and we'll add some pops of light to that. I will show you to highlight the chair. So I'm just going to be bringing in my dry brush. That is by Artist Opus. But first of all, I'm going to mix the colours together that I want, and again, I'm coming back into my cadmium red, and I'm just adding the smallest amount of the Mars Black. I don't want this layer to be the brightest pop. I just want it to be built up slightly before we come to using mainly the cadmium red on itself, and then introducing red medium, which is more of a tomatoey type colour for the final pop of red. So when you're dry brushing, you don't want to wet your brush massively. If you're able to have a damping sponge, that is probably the best way to control the amount of wet that you get into your brush. But I've come to get a lot more used to it, so I know how to, touch the water by my water jar and dab it off to get a really good effect with your dry brushing. And of course, that's also why I have my rag by me, and I also got that old piece of kitchen roll that's really lasted me forever so far. So you put on the smallest amount of paint, just like that, and then you tend to brush off a little bit of it, and that gives you your dry brushing. So I'm going, if you will notice as well that I do speed you up in some parts. I show you in regular time, and then I do speed us up a little bit. Otherwise, I'm at one of these funny dualities with the length of the videos. Without speeding up parts and cutting some bits out, the video would be looking at over 2 hours long, and I really don't know how long people are willing to sit around and watch. I know a lot of you do tell me that you love watching the paint. So it is a longer video. It is just over an hour. I think it's like an hour and 2 minutes, something like that. But cutting it down any further, I wouldn't be able to get as much as of the tutorial in. So as I'm building up the highlights, you can really see this red coming forward, and as I said, I am not going down into any of the corners or crevices at all, with this brighter red. It's more of, like I said, the cadmium red with the titchiest with the titchiest bit of the Mars Black. And as I go on, because the dry brushing, it takes moments to dry. It really does. It does not take long to dry, and I'm already back up onto the hat. And at this point now, I'm just going into the cadmium red, and this is just to build up that next highlight. And as you can see, I'm aiming my brush just into the middle parts of the suit, and this is where I want those colour pops, and it really brings his outfit to life, and it's so enjoyable. And when you're sitting here painting it and you're noticing the colours coming forward, it really is it's so enjoyable, it's so satisfying. I'm actually really impressed with how long it took me to actually start putting paint on my hand. So I'm just giving that a minute, and I'm going to introduce a brighter pop and then probably move on to the chair, but we'll see. So this is just cadmium red medium. It is not a full cadmium. What does that mean? It just means it is not as hot, it's not got as much pigment to it, but it is absolutely perfect when you want to add a highlight of red. And I know I'm a broken record, I've said this a number of times, but you can clearly see the difference in the shades. And I always say, and I've said it before, excuse the pusscat if you can hear the cat meowing again. He's really on one today. It's like a tomato type red, and I'm also not putting as much as this of this on, so this is going to be more or less the final pop of colour. I think I might do another coating of it slightly over the top once this has dried, but it's barely any, and that's just, you know, once it's dried you can see any bits that really need it that little bit more, but concentrating mainly just on the tops of the knees and in the middle parts of the suit on his tummy. Subscribers, thank you so much for subscribing. I really appreciate it. And if you're not a subscriber, please consider doing so. It doesn't cost anything. I have noticed that my numbers, I say numbers, I don't seem to be getting as many views, and I hate to be one of those people to bring it up, but it makes me sad. So please make sure you're liking and commenting, because it really does help my channel. So I'm just going to be moving into the titanium white and a little tiny bit of that phthalo blue. I had to think then, I couldn't remember what the colour was called. So I can start adding a brighter spot. No, I'm wrong. I am completely wrong. This is titanium white and a tiny little bit of an addition of the burnt sienna. And this is so we can start adding the brighter pop of colour onto the fur of his outfit. And you can see the colour really coming forward here. And once again, and I'm going to say it because sometimes it needs to be said, especially if you are new to painting and want to learn, I'm not going in to right into the corners, because we want those darker colours for our texture of colours. And occasionally, if I'm not dry brushing, which is, you know, very lightly dancing over it, I do start like stippling, and the stippling is kind of stabbing the brush. I you know, once I do start moving away from the added little tiny bit of the burnt sienna and just mainly into the titanium white, I'm doing more of the stippling action just to get a little bit more detail onto the piece. It really does work, and you can practice doing things like that on paper as well, and you can practice the amount of pressure that you're going to be putting on any brushes. Just really have a play around and enjoy it. It's just painting. If you're not happy with it, all you need to do is either let it dry and start again, because your colours are there on your palette, or you can just, well, dry it. Yeah, you could wait for it to dry and start again, or you can dry it using a hairdryer, you know, to make it quicker. But if you are new to the painting world and you're new to this, if you're using a hairdryer, make sure you have a cool setting on it, because using a hot dryer, I've seen a few artists using a heat gun to dry their paint jobs. Now, the heat isn't going to do your paint many favours, and you don't want to cause colour shift. Now, that's when it appears to be dry on, it appears to be dry on top, but it actually isn't fully dry. That means the paint is still wet underneath. So be careful of stuff like that. It is best to use the cool setting of a hairdryer, and that's just my little bit of advice. So I just wanted to tidy up where I got a bit too much of the white onto the hat, and that was easily done because, as I said, the colours are already on your palette. So you can just go back into your colours and then use whatever you're using, whether it's an actual dry brush or a really good, a very good brush with some good firm bristles on there, and you can work to blend it together again. It's not too difficult, but again, you can always practice first on some paper, or even some canvas boards or stretched canvases. So I've just added a little bit of that extra white pop onto his boots. It wasn't clear on the actual model whether he has got a little bit of fur lining at the bottom of his trousers, but I've placed it there regardless because I wasn't entirely sure. So this is where I am stippling. See? You can see that motion there, that I'm not brushing, so to speak. I'm more almost stabbing the brush. But it doesn't sound as vicious as I'm saying it, but I'm just trying to think of an easier way to describe what I'm doing. But that gives a really lovely bit of texture to the piece as well, and it gives a slightly brighter pop of the white of the fur without making it look just white, which I've said before. And the next thing we'll be doing is concentrating on getting some of the colour onto his beard, because of course we don't want him to be Papa Smurf, do we? He needs to have his snowy white beard, and it's just a case of doing exactly the same as we've done here, but with a different colour element to the white. So it is at this point that I did decide, because his outfit had had chance to settle, that I am adding one final pop of red to his suit, and it is the cadmium red medium that I'm using. I could have gone brighter again using one of like the Holbein, I've got a fluorescent red. And that really does, when I tend to be doing the more whimsical paintings, I love to use the fluorescents when I'm painting mushrooms and stuff like that. But after putting this last pop of the red medium on, I was happy. I did dither a little bit, deciding if I wanted more to it, but I decided in the end that I was quite happy with the colours. So coming into his beard, now exactly the same as the base that we started with, I'm still using the phthalo blue along with the titanium white, but I'm coming more in with the white and having the very lighter blue mixture. As you can see on my palette there, because I am trying to show you a little bit of the paint mixing that I'm doing as best as I can as well. And I'm just using my regular brush there just to mix the colours in, because I didn't want to get too much paint into the dry brush that I'm using, and because I'm cleaning the dry brushes between uses, I'm doing my absolute best to clean them off and really dry them off. These brushes, you really don't want to have them laden with water. So I have as well, occasionally, I will use the hairdryer to help dry the bristles on them so I can get the best use of them between the paint, using different colour paints. So again, just dry brushing, and I'm very gently going mainly across the top of the detail on his beard. And again, like I said, this is just building that colour forward, and it gives us a different white tone to the fur on his suit. And as I bring it forward, and I'm happy that, you know, that fur, that next layer has dried, I'll then come back into the paint, but there will be less of the phthalo blue included in the mix until I just come in just with the titanium white. I did have the option of putting out some fluid golden white, the titanium white, because it is more highly pigmented. Is pigmented a word? I must look it up because it doesn't sound right when I say it. Pigmented. I don't think it's a word. I think it's my word, but you get what I mean. I'm sure you do. Yeah. So, because of the way I brought the colours forward, I didn't feel the need. But there's always those options open to you. So I'm just popping out a little tiny bit of my Mars Black. My colours are drying a little bit faster today. I think it's because I've had the heating on all night at a higher temperature in the studio to make sure it was nice and cosy for working in here today. And I'm just going to be working on his belt, and then we can think about doing the buckle. And this is the opportunity now for me to tidy up any lining around the gloves and on the boots as well, where I might have managed to get a bit of paint. And I'm going carefully as well along the top of the belt, because where I've done the highlights of the red of the outfit, I've managed to get it across the top of the leather of the belt as well. But it's also a good opportunity to see where I might have missed any of the chair underneath, so I want those to be the darker spots. And I'm not adding so much of the phthalo blue to the black mix on this occasion, just concentrating on mainly getting down into the corners to give it that it just gives it a bit more depth, because black is it is a funny colour to work with when you're painting on canvases and when you're painting on models. And I think that's looking good. I'm quite happy with that. So I'm going to come forward now with another highlight on his beard, and it's going to be less of the as I said before, less of the phthalo blue now, and mainly into that titanium white, without going too crazy, because as I say, you don't want to lose any of those undertones you've already created. Look at that, isn't he looking wonderful? And I'll be downsizing my brush as well, going to one of my smaller brushes just to give me some control to put a pop of highlight on that little piece of hair that's sticking out from underneath his hat, and to give a little bit more control near the skin and just along the ridges. This just gives me the opportunity to give a bit of a brighter pop again, because this brush is a bit more precise than the dry brushing is. And if I'm not happy with it, I can just give a little bit of a squiggle. Even using my fingers, I'm quite happy to do so. And I think he's looking really, really good. I'm really pleased with this. So I'm going to give this a minute. I'm going to give it a chance to settle down. I'm really, really pleased with it. And I'm going to start bringing his skin tone forward a little, because now that I've added in the whites, his skin tone, he's looking a little bit sunburned, isn't he? And that's what happens when you are bringing your colours. When those lighter tones start appearing, you can actually see the difference in the colours. So once again, I'm coming into the titanium white, and this time I'm using just the red medium, and I'm adding a little bit of the burnt sienna and a tiny little touch of the yellow. And you can bring your colours forward, and of course don't forget, you are not covering up everything. You still want him to have his darker tones in his, around the ridges of the nose, in the folds of his eyes, because his eyes are shut, he's sleeping, and under the hairline as well, and around the hat. Now, where I wasn't as tidy as I shouldn't have been, under the hairline and the hat, I can just come back into the darker tone that I have mixed up there and just tidy up those linings to blend it in with the lighter tones. And it really doesn't take much more than that. And I want to make sure that I'm getting the slightly darker tones under his nose. And I know we're not really going to be looking up his nose, but I know it's there. So I don't want him to have the blue colour, the beard colours right up under his nostrils. So I'm going to add a little bit more of my titanium white to that skin mix, so I can give him a little bit of a highlight across his forehead, on the tip of his nose, and just a tiny little bit on his eyelids, just the tiniest amount. And this is, it is a good idea to bring your brush size down if you need to. Don't feel like you have to use all the same brushes. Use what is comfortable to you. I know I say, oh, you should be using good quality brushes. Well, yes, you should. You should use some good quality brushes where possible, but it isn't always possible. So at least use what is comfortable, what is best comfortable. So here come those highlights. It is more into the titanium white, into that mixture with the red and the brown, and it really does make a huge difference. And because I want Santa to also have his eyebrows, I'm bringing those back as well, because I'm happy with his skin tone, so I can work back on his eyebrows. Just being really careful, and I'm just going into that same mixture I already had on the palette, the titanium white and the phthalo blue, which is what I used in his beard colour. And that can have a few moments to settle, and I can add the higher the more whiter colour to that as well, to give him that, so he's got his undertone and he's got his brighter spots on top. And adding a tiny little bit, I'm going to go back into the red medium and add that to the skin tone, just the tiniest bit, so that I can give him a slight bit of a rosy cheek, because of course Father Christmas has rosy cheeks. He doesn't, you know, in the poem and stuff. So there you go, just the tiniest little bit of the red medium into the skin tone, and I'm just very, very gently dabbing it, and I mean very lightly dabbing it onto his cheeks, and that really is very, very effective. You don't have to go crazy. You don't need to be, you know, like rouging him up. He just needs to be his jolly old self. So that's Iridescent Gold by Golden, and I'm just going to be placing this onto his belt buckle. It possibly would have been easier to have given the buckle perhaps a first layer of just the burnt sienna, but the reddish tone is okay. I don't mind that, but it is going to need 2 coats. Even using the Golden, which is a heavy body paint, it is still going to need a slightly it's going to need a second coating. So I'm just going to show you how I'm going to create the leather effect of the chair, and I'm just adding in a bit more of the burnt sienna. I'm nearly out. I have written it on the blackboard that I need to get another one. A little bit of yellow. I'm not using full cadmium yellow today. This is just a yellow medium by Golden. Again, it is heavy body though, so it works a lot better on any darker tones that you might be using, and you find that you don't need to use as many layers. If it wasn't a heavy body and it was more of a student grade paint, it might take a little bit more work to get it to get the colours going together over the darker surface, but this is okay for that. So mixing in the burnt sienna with the yellow, and I'm just dry brushing over the top. Now I'm not going to be going into the crevices. We don't want to, because that is where the darker spots need to be, and we only want the highlights on certain parts of the chair. So always think of that. It's like I said in the start, look around you, look at pictures. If you don't have certain furniture in your home and certain colours of furniture, just look on Google, you know, and you get your ideas and you can figure out how the shadows work. So that's all I'm doing, is bringing in the brighter spots, and you can see there I added a little bit too much of the yellow to the burnt sienna mix, so I just went back in again, back into the burnt sienna, and went back over it. It wasn't too difficult because it's still a little bit wet. A little bit of the wet on wet blending is absolutely fine. And I quite like that there's a bit of a highlight. I'm giving a bit more of a brighter highlight on the arms of the chairs that we can see, and along the front part. I like the idea that it's a worn old chair, and potentially it's been scuffed on the corners and such over the years, so that is always a really good little extra to give if you're doing like a leather effect of a chair. And I think that's looking really good. I'm going to let it dry, and I'm just going to bring it forward with one more highlight. And how I'm doing that is I'm adding the yellow to the red, and that's given us like an orange. There's a tiny little bit of a hint of the burnt sienna still within it, and I'm not going crazy with this, guys. You can see that I'm just running it over certain parts, and that's just, like I said, giving us one last little pop, you know, where the leather chair may not have been touched as much perhaps, so it's still got more of its original colour and it's not as worn, because, you know, it just is. It works, and I think it looks absolutely awesome. And there is a pillow there, and when I painted over that pillow, it was still mainly that original primer colour, the orange, that crazy orange we had to start with. So I decided that I quite liked the orangey type look, and I liked the way it looked against the brown leather chair and also the red of Santa's suit. So I just mixed in the yellow and the red together, to give it like a dark orange tone, and I just add that little bit of the element onto the parts of the cushion that we can see. I think it was important to still give it that little bit of detail. I think that's it works. I think it works really well, and I quite like it. I didn't want it to be red like his suit, but I wanted it to be almost orangey, darkish brown. And I'm doing another highlight. I forgot that I did a very final bit of light on that chair. And again, it is just doing that little bit of dry brushing. And I think this is where I am mixing some colours in together now for that pillow. And it doesn't need a lot. You can't see a lot of it, but I know it's there, so I really want it to pop that little bit. And I use the same colour just to give a few worn bits like this, just like I said, on the edges of the arms of the chair, and a little dash here and there. It would be cool, really cool on this, if it was like a cat or something asleep on the top of the chair. That would have been quite cool. So yeah, looking at it, having a look around. So there we go with the pillow, and as I say, just coming into the yellow and adding a bit of that brown, not the brown, the red, to give us an orange tone. And I'm just going to give it a little bit, the tiniest bit of a highlight just along the tip there, and a tiny little bit there where they are sticking out slightly. And it really does, it kind of separates the red suit from the rest of it. So the last few highlights I want to give, and this is just the titanium white, and that was just a little tap across his eyebrows and that little bit of hair that is sticking out from underneath his hat. And finally, the last highlight for the buckle, and that is just coming back into that iridescent gold, and there's the slightest little shimmer to this gold, which is really lovely, and it really works for this piece. I did consider silver, but I think the gold ties in so beautifully with that chair colour. I'm really, really pleased with it, and I have so enjoyed this creation. I'm going to give this a minute, make sure I don't need to add anything more, but I think I'm really happy. Thank you for watching. Love you, and stay weird.
The nerd goblin hums as she ties up bows, crafting magic with glitter that glows. Gerald the gator spins and twirls, throws sparkles high like a disco swirl. The frogs are croaking fa la la, carol choir, no flaw, no flaw. Oh, it's chaos and cheer in the goblin's lair this year. The cats climb high, the tree might fall, but it's the best Christmas of them all. Tiny gifts wrapped in paper so bright,